Hi, welcome to the bathtub. This is the master bather, Scott Bradfield, talking to you from yesterday was Super Tuesday 2020, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the last Super Tuesday of all time because the powers that be are slowly assembling everywhere, and they're not good ones at all. So we're going to ignore. This is a good day to go to the bathtub. This is Super Wednesday. Yesterday was Super Tuesday. This is Super Wednesday, and we went straight to the bathtub. Don't take your eye off the bathtub. That's my only advice to all of you who follow the news. Now we've got I just a kind of a general talk today about one of the real great bathtub reads, and that is Stanislaw Lem. We talked about Stanislaw Lem almost a year ago. We talked about a couple of his books that were in translation back in the early '80s. Just recently, the MIT Press has begun. I guess they're threatening to start printing or reprinting all of the Stanislaw Lem, or most of the Stanislaw Lem, in English. This is the 6 that have come out this month. The 6 that just came out is the Invincible, His Master's Voice, Memoirs of a Space Traveler, High Castle Remembrance, Return from the Stars, and Hospital of the Transfiguration. I thought I'd just talk very briefly about each of them so to give you an idea of what's out there and what's just new in the bookshops. And you might want to think about picking up some Stanislaw Lem. He's brilliant. He's just hilarious. Now, I still prefer these old Avon editions. I still think these are some of the most beautiful paperbacks I've ever seen. And Avon did a lovely series of and lovely translations. Most notably is Michael Candell, who did a wonderful job with Lem. But I have to say, I liked almost all the translations I've read of his. It seems like the beauty of his. He's actually a really good prose writer, and it seems to come through in everything I've read. Everything I've read of him in this edition. There's a few things we've talked a little bit about some of the problems. Lem is a science fiction writer. He's known as a science fiction writer in Poland. He starts in the 50s, I think. I forget now. I'm going to put a link to the piece I just published in the Washington Post about him. And he started publishing in the 40s and 50s. And started writing kind of fabulous fables, interstellar fables that sometimes seem like science fiction, and sometimes they seem more like Calvino. I compare him more to Calvino than I would to most science fiction writers. In fact, Cosmic Comics, this type of book, they're comical, strange, fabulous, and they're kind of almost political comedies. One of my favorite stories this is the Star Diaries. He wrote a number of stories about a character named Ijon Tichy. I can't say his name, Ijon Tichy. Excuse me, my Polish friends. Ijon Tichy, whatever the hell it is. And he did two. Another one's called Perks the Pilot. He's got these two. They're kind of episodic stories where he just writes a lot of stories about this one character traveling around the galaxies and having adventures. And then he puts them together in these two different collections, which have been published in America and in English translations in possibly weirdly assembled volumes. So the first one was called Star Diaries, probably one of the best of the two. And then a sequel was published in the early 80s called Memoirs of a Space Traveler, which is basically the stories that weren't included in the original collection, I believe. This one, the new edition that's available as a new book from MIT Press, as a news story that has not been published in English. Okay. One of my favorite stories in the Star Diaries, just to give an example, is Tichy lands on a planet that's run by robots who are running around. These robots are running. They own everything. And what he learns is that they've supposedly slaughtered all the human beings. The human beings created these robots to serve them, and the robots basically killed them all and took over the planet. Now, as Tichy's traveling around, he runs into some people who are actually human beings pretending to be robots. So they're wearing like a metal head and they're pretending to be robots. And they're saying, well, I don't want them to know I'm a human being because they'll eat me. And what he eventually finds at the end of the story is that everybody is dressed up like they're all human beings pretending to be robots because they all think everyone else is a robot trying to eat them. Okay, it's not a comedy about communism, which is what I think some people would like to say. It's a comedy about the horrible nature of people trying to hide from one another in so many societies that we can count. But particularly Poland after World War II, I'm sure he recognized some of this. So this is a wonderful book. Some of the stories in this one are good too. There's lots of really funny stories, lots of kind of weird inventors and adventures going across. He often goes to planets that are run by robots, and there's a very funny robot takes over this planet story. And again, it includes what distinguishes this from the original English American edition of this book is it has an additional story that was not in the previous editions. Some of the other ones, High Castle Remembrance, there's a lot of confusion with the MIT editions, I thought. I don't know how well presented they were. They're very beautiful books. They're all well translated from everything I've read. I can't tell, I don't read Polish, but they read well in English. That's all I can tell you. And I'm drinking some of my Super Tuesday wine, special wine reserved for Super Tuesdays and Super Wednesdays. And this is a little memoir he wrote about being a kid in Poland before the Nazi invasion in Lvov, which I guess is not now part of Poland, but it's about his childhood, growing up with a father who was a doctor, and his fascination with objects. He's a really odd character. That's all I can say about Lem. He's a very odd intelligence. He's very intelligent. He has amazingly good narrative ideas, and he finishes them off. He follows them through. And there's something about his prose that just sparkles, even in translation. It's just sharp and quick and witty. So this is a nice little, I enjoyed this more than I thought I would. Return from the Stars is, the first half of Return from the Stars is kind of brilliant. It's the idea is that this is a little more traditional science fiction than these kind of fabulous stories. And the premise is a man goes away for 150 years, he comes back to Earth, and everything has changed. And he doesn't understand what anyone's talking about. And I was going to read a passage, but I think we don't really have time. Almost the whole first 50, 75 pages is about him trying to describe this world that he can't describe because he doesn't have a language to describe what's going on. And the conversations he has with people in which he doesn't understand them and they don't understand him, it is really, really unusual and brilliant and funny. It then turns into a kind of weird love story because there's the second half of the book kind of changes and it's a lot different. And it works, but I kind of lost interest in the second half. Hospital Transfiguration. The MIT selections are very odd. And I don't know, they haven't brought out his best books yet, which I believe is Siberia. That's my personal favorite, the Siberia, and even the Investigation that we talked about a few months ago. Hospital Transfiguration was a sort of slightly autobiographical novel, which still really holds up. He wrote this in 1948. So this is his first novel. It was based on his experiences as a doctor in Poland during the Nazi occupation and how he worked in a mental hospital. And it's about a young doctor going through really a horrific cuckoo's nest. Like all know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This horrific asylum for mentally ill people in which they just torture these people, trying to make them better. They literally have no idea what to do with these sick people. And at the same time, there's the Nazis and the government are kind of controlling the hospital. And it's about a young guy trying to find somebody who will help him understand all this, and it's a very moving book. Okay, his Master's Voice is considered one of his better books, and it is a very interesting and very complicated and complex book told from a scientist who's making contact with alien intelligence. The thing about Lem is that he starts off with ideas. And they just kind of transform and morph into even weirder ideas and even weirder ideas. He is a really imaginative writer. And that one is a little bit more conservative science fiction, though it's so full of ideas. I wanted to just briefly talk about one of the problems of Lem. This is called The Invincible. It's the first English translation of this book. One of his slightly more conventional science fiction books. This comes out in English in 1973, but it was originally translated into German, and then the translators of this translated from the German to the English. it's not a pretty sight. So it's just not going to lead to the most perfect, the best translation. It's not a bad read. I remember reading it when it came out, but it doesn't read as well as the one that Bill Johnston has just published here with MIT Press. There's confusion, as I started to say, with MIT Press. Some of these books, such as Bill Johnston's translation from Polish to English of The Invincible, it's a kind of exploring an alien world where a spaceship goes lost, and another spaceship goes looking for them, and they encounter this planet ruled over by these kind of mechanical intelligences. I don't want to describe it more than that. It's a very haunting, a little bit like Alien, the first Alien, about going to a place that is totally, totally different. Lem does that very well, giving us a sense of what total difference is. And the Bill Johnston translation that just came out for the first time is available in America. It was originally translated. This is where I got confused when it came out. It originally says 2017, this translation. This is true of a couple of the other books. It's true of the High Castle Remembrance, the Michael Kandel translation. These were originally translated, as I understand, for a Polish publishing house, so that these English translations were published in Poland, and now for the first time they're available in America. I think that's quite important to know, because this is a significant writer, and these are the first availability of these books. So that's it. I'm not going to say too much more. This has already gone too long. I would definitely go out, and if you want a brand new book, you get those. If you want to get more beautiful books, these old ones are sometimes the same translations. But if you want to read The Invincible, you have to get this. So this is the only available proper translation in English, and the same thing. That same thing is going for High Castle. This remembrance, this memoir of his childhood in Lvov. So that's it. For those of you who do read some SF, American SF, the writers who come to my mind when I read Lem was kind of isolated from American science fiction. So while late in life he wrote quite fondly of Philip K. Dick, most of the American science fiction wasn't available to him when he was a young kid. So he's kind of growing up it's almost like he's in an alternate reality where he doesn't even know any of that stuff is out here. But he still reminds me quite a bit of a lot other writers of his time in America. And Robert Sheckley, we're definitely taking him into the bathtub soon. One of the great short story writers, and the same invention and the same humor and the same ability to finish a story he starts in a way you don't expect is very Sheckleyan. Lem would have liked him. The other one he reminds me of is C.M. Kornbluth. Died very young, sadly too young. Most people will know him if they know him at all. He wrote The Marching Morons, one of the funniest stories ever written in science fiction. But many of the stuff he wrote, and much of the stuff he wrote with Frederick Pohl, is still really good. But if anyone's seen Idiocracy, I want to say Michael Judd or Mike Judge, I forget. Idiocracy is Judge says he had no idea about the Marching Morons, but the idea that the world breeds stupidity and that people get stupider and stupider, and only stupidity will survive. So we have kind of this reverse Darwinian evolution going on, is the premise of the Marching Morons, and it's hilarious. It's hilarious, like Lem. Okay, go out and get some Lem. You're going to have a really good time with them. If you don't like science fiction, I would recommend the kind of Calvinesque Star Diaries. If you do like really kind of unusual science fiction, then The Invincible, or his most famous book, Solaris, another translation problem, which Bill Johnston has corrected in an e-book edition. It's not available in a proper translation as a hard book, but is available as an e-book. That's how I got it. And this project of reissuing and issuing for the first time proper English translations is a great one from MIT Press. We want to thank them for that. And we'll also say they're beautiful covers, and most of them have a new introduction. Some of the introductions I could live without, but most of them have a brand new introduction by some writer or scientist or so forth. Okay? All right, that's all I want to say. Go read them. I won't read them to you. I wanted to, but we just don't have time. Stanislaw Lem. Thank you very much, Stanislaw. You did a great job. You wrote a lot of great books.